Right to be Read podcast, episode number 45, interview with Nick Loper.
You are listening to the Right to be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast, the podcast that inspires and encourages writers. I'm your host, Ani Alexander, and before we begin, I would like to thank once again everyone who is listening to this show. I really appreciate every single one of you, and I hope that the podcast provides valuable information and, as promised, encouragement and inspiration as well. Well, if you have written a book and don't know what to do next, I have created an ebook which will help you find out everything you need to know about creating a good quality book, preparing that book for publishing, and finding your readers. So just head over to www.anialexander.com/free or just click the link which I will include in the show notes to get the book. Today, I'm interviewing Nick Loper. Nick Loper is the founder of the Side Hustle Nation, and he believes in the hustle, he's hustling, and one of his side hustles is publishing. So we'll talk about entrepreneurship, we'll talk about side hustle, and we'll also talk about Kindle book marketing. And believe me, the tip and the unexpected thing that Nick shared with us today is something you won't find out anywhere else besides his blog, I guess. So let's head over to the interview. Hello, Nick, and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast. I'm really happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Oh, Annie, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. I was just looking at your website, actually, before we started talking on Skype. And I love the colors. They're really kind of, very cheerful. So, and I love the design, and it's really nice. And, but what I love most is the topic. So, but since it's your website, I want you to present what it is about and why did you create it?
Well, thank you for the design compliment. It's a totally free WordPress theme, so I can't take too much credit for it. The site is called sidehustlenation.com, and it's just kind of a blog and podcast and community for part-time entrepreneurs, aspiring, I should say, and part-time entrepreneurs who are looking to earn money outside of their day job, either just for a little bit of a financial cushion or to build a bridge so they can eventually quit their jobs.
Okay, so those are, I have a feeling, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I have a feeling that most of my listeners kind of are in that group of people who might be, because I have a feeling that most of them don't really like their jobs that much. And since they have another passion, they're kind of looking for different ways to get away from such a time-consuming day job, which doesn't leave too much space and time and energy to write as much as they would like to.
Yeah. Well, publishing is one of my personal favorite side hustles. So this is good. Now it's definitely a tough gig to, I think, make a full-time thing out of, but we can get into that and best practices and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, publishing, I think the good thing about publishing right now is that it's very accessible to absolutely everyone. So even people who don't have too much money and too much time to invest, they still can kind of get some decent results at the end, right?
Right. The ability to put your work for sale. I remember when I put my first book up on Amazon, like how cool it was to like go to Amazon and search my name or search the title of the book, and just have like a buy button on the world's largest store, whatever that figure is, like 250 million verified credit card accounts, and just that's one thing that I like to talk about on my podcast a lot. Kind of having as many buy buttons out there as you can, giving people different opportunities to do business with you, to interact with you, and Amazon definitely being a huge, huge platform to do that.
Okay, but you didn't start with the publishing as a side hustle, right? You did something else. What kind of things were you doing before getting also into the publishing?
My original side hustle was a comparison shopping site for footwear. So it was called, back in the day, it was called shoesrus.net. And what it was kind of a catalog aggregator of all the different footwear retailers like Zappos. And I don't know, Zappos is really the only like brand name one, but there's like 30 or 40 others. Mm-hmm. And pull in all their shoes and say, if you're looking for a specific model of shoe, it's going to be available at these 5 or 6 stores. Here's where you can get some coupon deal. Here's how much shipping is going to cost, and ultimately where you can find the best deal. And then those stores would send a finder's fee or commission back to me for anyone who would purchase through the site.
Oh, okay, so it was like an affiliate marketing thing. You were getting affiliate commissions from sales.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So are you still, because I'm not sure, are you still working full-time and doing this as a side thing?
I am I'm full-time self-employed at this point.
Wow,
I quit in 2008.
2008. So you're full-time self-employed since 2008.
And I wish I could tell you it was all rainbows and unicorns and puppy dogs, but it's been a lot of ups and downs in that time. But hopefully more ups than downs. So I at least haven't had to dust off the old resume in a while. So still doing okay.
Well, I think that it should be more ups than downs because you never got back to the corporate. So, either the corporate was a terrible experience for you or you didn't really get that terrible results and you managed always to push through and get better with the time. So you're self-employed. How did that feel? I mean, many people are kind of, trying to get there. And, many people have it as an ultimate dream to be completely self-employed. Once you became one, how did it feel?
Well, it didn't go exactly as planned. On day one was kind of a pretty serious wake-up call. So my first day of I called it my retirement. So my first day of self-employment, the server for the shoe website goes down, which is like, okay, that's fine. That's temporary. I'll go to the gym or something and come back. But of all the days, Google decided that this was the day they were going to crawl the website for their quality guidelines. And so immediately they're like, well, this site doesn't even load, for one. Like, this is horrible. And then when it finally came back online, it had kind of raised a red flag and kind of gotten on their radar. And so they took a closer look at it and said, hey, this is just a crappy affiliate site. The only purpose of this site's existence is to send people to other sites. And I was like, that's the whole purpose of Google. Who are you to talk? But it was... so they essentially shut down my advertising account for that summer for 3 months as I kind of worked with the tech team to kind of make the tweaks. They don't really tell you what they want to see, but essentially lost 80% of the traffic overnight.
Wow.
Very, very stressful summer to try and get back in their good graces. And just kind of that was a big wake up call towards diversification and just not relying on one source of income, one traffic source. And so that's kind of what the maybe the beginning, planting the seeds of the Side Hustle Nation stuff at that point.
Okay, so one shouldn't put all their eggs in one basket because you never know what happens.
You never know. People will say, "Oh, starting a business isn't that risky." It's like, well, is it any riskier than relying on your employer, relying on only one source of income for your livelihood? So I don't know. I think doing it part-time to start is a way to mitigate that risk.
Well, I mean, I have a feeling that there's nothing risk-free. Actually, I mean, living is risky too. You never know what will happen to you.
Right.
I mean, you don't have any guarantees anytime. So it's just something that, I mean, even if you are working in a corporate and on a very good position, and even if you are happy with your job, you never know what will happen next. And you'll never know when they will change some policies. You'll never know what their new strategy will tell. And one day you may end up having this box of your stuff in your hands walking out. So it's just, I truly believe that one should diversify, because that's the only way to kind of, at least get the illusion of being safer.
Yeah, at least you feel like you're working towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but right now, since you've been diversified, I suppose, what are your main areas of business?
So even though I shut down the affiliate, shut down the shoe site earlier this summer, after 8 or 9 years of running it, it finally kind of outlived its usefulness. So I still do affiliate marketing, a couple other properties. I do the Kindle publishing stuff. I've got the Side Hustle Nation stuff. So I run some private coaching and private mastermind stuff through the blog and podcast there. What else? Some freelancing stuff. I've been doing experiments on Fiverr. I've been doing experiments on, building courses for Udemy. Just, a handful of different projects, and trying to mash it all together into a full-time thing.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying brings me to the thought again that entrepreneurship is kind of a personality-based thing, because you kind of, you don't, you're not afraid of changes and learning new things and trying and experimenting with different possibilities, which is, not everyone is comfortable with these kind of things. So, but it's something that all entrepreneurs should do. And if they can't or don't feel comfortable, maybe that's not for them actually. So it's very interesting that you've tried so many different things. And since you mentioned the affiliate marketing and also your Side Hustle Nation, those two, do you think that it's a bit more difficult to create something which is relationship based and building the audience with whom you interact and get engagement from, rather than, driving traffic to the site and getting commissions?
It's definitely a slower play. It's definitely a more long-term play. And I kind of knew that getting into it. But one thing that's been most effective has been the podcast, actually. It's probably grown 3 times faster than the blog itself in terms of, downloads versus traffic to the site. And it's, kind of exposed the Side Hustle brand to a whole new group of people, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, interesting. I experienced that too, actually. I had I didn't know. I thought maybe that was just my experience. But yes, getting audience through podcast for me was much easier than through blog.
Yeah, I think it's just so much less crowded. As crowded as it is, it's still like, a tiny percentage of what what the websites indexed in Google are. And so that's kind of a cool way to go about it. And it's fun because you can watch the growth of it, because it takes the same amount of time and energy to produce an episode that 10 people listen to or one that 1,000 people listen to. And so I don't know, I'm still excited on the medium. It's probably the highlight of my week, talking to awesome people and putting together the show. That's it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. Podcasting is a really cool thing, and it really brings you the opportunities to meet very cool people whom otherwise you would never meet, most probably.
Now, what I would do, I'm trying to think, because it's still tough to monetize. Like if you want to sell sponsorships, if you want to sell advertising, it's like you got to have huge volume, huge numbers to make it worthwhile. But where I think it makes sense is if you have some service to sell on the back end, and I'm not doing a great job of this either, but I was talking with somebody who was like in the hospitality industry. Like they were doing like executive coaching for people who manage hotels or something.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, oh my gosh, you could run a podcast where you're like interviewing, the managers of the Ritz-Carlton, or like owners of these other hospitality groups, or like people who run successful Airbnbs and all this stuff, and kind of like position yourself as the expert by interviewing these experts. And then like, who's going to be interested in that podcast? Like other people in the hotel industry. It's like, oh, this could be, I don't know. I was getting excited for her.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I was thinking, like, I when I was just launching my podcast, although I've been in self-publishing for quite a while, but I never positioned myself as an expert. I mean, being myself as an expert,
Well,
but
you are the expert.
no, well, I mean, compared to the bigger experts, let's say, but I always told people, like, okay, I don't know the answer, but I know people who know the answer for sure. So, I can get the answer anyway. So if you want the result, if you want to find out, how to solve a problem, I can bring that solution. So even if it doesn't come from me specifically, I can get it for you. Which is really, and that, is being achieved through podcasting and through creating these connections. So you, later on, if you need something, you can go and approach those people at some point.
Yeah. And you've had Joanna Penn, you've had Steve Scott, you're going to have Pat Flynn. Yes. You already had Pat?
I had Pat Flynn already. Yeah.
So you're talking to some big name people, building those connections. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really surprised how, I don't know. Many people have this image that it's very difficult to get those people on their podcast.
Were you nervous sending that email?
Oh, I wasn't, and maybe that's why. No, but I knew that I couldn't do much. So what I could do was write the best pitch I could, most probably, and the worst thing that could happen was they would say no. So, I was trying to look at it from the logical point of view, not to get too disappointed at the end and not to be overexcited and have great expectations in the very beginning. So, but what I'm thinking is usually people are looking, many people approach me, more people approach me asking how you get such big guests on your podcast than people who are approaching me with things related to self-publishing, actually, which is very funny. But what I'm thinking is, I can't answer those people because there is no one magic button. What I'm doing is I'm customizing everything based on the guest I'm pitching. So I don't have a standard email text, really. I don't have I don't approach everyone through emails, with someone I can use Twitter, with someone else I can use Facebook. So it all depends who you are approaching and how well do you know this person. So it's kind of, once it starts becoming personalized, it feels that you're not just someone out there, and if you sound desperate, I guess it's gonna be very bad. So, you shouldn't sound desperate. So I don't know, but anyway, it's just amazing opportunity. The podcasting, I think it can be kind of linked to any kind of side hustle activity, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good branding element and probably a good marketing channel for your other services. But yeah, it's probably not. I wouldn't consider it a business on its own.
Okay, so what would be your biggest advice, like something, if someone is starting to side hustle parallel to his work, what he should look for and which should be the very first steps?
So I'll give a handful of answers here. So at the end of every show, I ask my guests for what's your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation. And when, through 50 episodes, there were a handful of kind of common things that'll stand out. So I'll give kind of those common answers, and then what I would, give as my number one piece of advice. Cool. So the first, kind of common question or kind of common answer that appeared over and over again was, just do it. Just, get over yourself, get started. You'll be better off. And this is very much true. Like a year from now, you'll be happier that you started today. It's like, oh my gosh, it's 2014. I can't start a blog. I can't start a podcast. Look how crowded it is. If I only had started this in 2008, well, you know what? It's not going to get any better in 2015. So you might as well start today. And then, a year from now, you can look back and say, okay, I'm glad that I started today. And if you're going to have some learning from that, you're going to, make pivots and changes along the way. You're never going to be able to do that until you get started. And one guest brought up a really, really good point. He said, sometimes the best opportunities aren't even visible until you're already in motion. And no one had ever expressed that to me before, but I was like, oh my gosh, that is so, so true. Because as you kind of start down this path, all of a sudden, like the vision changes and like new things begin presenting themselves. You put yourself out there, other people start connecting with you and presenting these ideas. Like I don't know. It's kind of, you have to put a little bit of faith into that. But I thought that one was really good. The second point is kind of adopting this lean startup mentality of just in time learning, just in time shipping, minimum viable product type stuff, and just you kind of like the bootstrapping mentality of like, look, I'm not going to dump my life savings into this idea before I validate it, before I test it out. Like, can I find a customer? Like, how can I get my first customer as cheaply as possible? Something like that without putting too much risk on the table.
Mm-hmm.
The third point that my guest brought up was just building your team and building your network. And the network thing was something for years and years and years, like I kind of neglected. Like I would go to conferences and, I would add people on LinkedIn, like when I got home and whatever. I thought that was networking. But it wasn't, really establishing any great connections, like, or I don't know, not like, I don't know, it sounds, I don't like the word networking, but the value of a network that you can lean on, people who you support them and they support you is so invaluable. And I'll give the example of like something stupid like SlideShare. So SlideShare is like a presentation sharing platform. And you put together your little PowerPoint, and if they like it, they put it up on the homepage, and you get traffic from that. And what I found is if you can get even just a handful of people, like 6 or 12 people to, tweet your presentation once it goes live, like that sends the social signals to their algorithms or whatever. Hey, this is a presentation that people like. We ought to feature it. And, not having that network 2 years ago to ask, hey, would you mind tweeting this? Like they would go nowhere. But like if you have a handful of people that, know, like, and trust you, and you're like, I'll share your thing. And then, it kind of builds on itself. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then when I turned the mic around and asked myself, well, my number one tip would be just really to find your why. Like what's motivating you, especially as a side hustler. You have limited time, limited hours. And so if you're doing something you don't particularly care about, the last thing you need is a second job that you hate, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're working on something you care about, if you're working on something that you're interested in that helps other people, I think you're going to have that intrinsic, inherent internal motivation to keep pushing, to keep going, because it is worth it as long as you have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have your why, you know what you're doing it for, and you kind of, because all of us have those days when we kind of, feel really down or are disappointed and feel like giving up. And if there is no why underneath as a foundation, most probably we will give up. So that's very important point, because if not that to rely on, I think most of the people usually give up because they think it's not worth it, and they think so because they don't have their why in place beforehand. Okay, let's concentrate on the self-publishing part. How did you get into that? Did you just, decide that it's booming and it's interesting and people are doing it, so I'll go ahead and write a book too? Or how did it happen?
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, so I had an affiliate site on the topic of outsourcing, topic of virtual assistants. Mm-hmm. And the site at the time, like, wasn't great looking aesthetically. And so it was like, and it's still not, but it's better than it was. And so I was like, I think, if I could write the book on this subject, it's going to help the site appear more authoritative. People are going to come here. They'll be like, hey, it doesn't look amazing. Maybe he's working on a redesign or whatever, but he wrote the book on the topic. He must be knowledgeable. It's going to be okay. And the surprising thing, so I, put together the Kindle book, and I think it was around 16,000 words, 17,000 words or so when I launched it. So not a very long book, not talking like, War and Peace or anything here. So put it up on Kindle and didn't know what I was doing, like made some horrible formatting mistakes, like despite what I thought was like triple checking everything. Like apparently all the images were missing when I first uploaded it, and sent out a free promotion that was downloaded by 1,000 people. And I guess all the images were broken, and thankfully no one flamed me in the reviews for that. But it was, just some like rookie mistakes. And since then, the surprising thing is, so I thought that I would, people would come to the website, they would buy the book, and, they would learn about this topic. The surprising thing is almost none of the sales, because I'm tracking with that affiliate link, almost none of the sales come through the website. Almost all of the sales come through Amazon's own ecosystem and ranking, and people searching directly through there. I don't know. That was really surprising, but kind of opened my eyes to the power. Even if you have, a small amount of traffic to your website, it just pales in comparison to the long tail reach of Amazon and the kind of all of their different categories and their search engine and stuff. So that was my start. And so now I've got 4 different books up on Amazon and keep looking forward to writing more.
So are you exclusively there within their KDP Select program?
I have a couple books that are on the exclusivity clause, and that's how I started, because I think for first-time authors, if you don't have a big built-in audience, I think there's some very powerful things you can do with that free promo launch. So I'm sure you've talked about this before, but like that's the biggest, in my mind, that's the biggest benefit of giving them the exclusive rights is being able to do the free promo launch. So I have a couple books that are on KDP Select, at least for the time being. And a couple that aren't, just because I wanted to experiment with some different platforms, and like Barnes and Nobles and Smashwords and iBooks and all this stuff. And those haven't been amazing. I guess it's incremental, but I don't know. They haven't. Still, most of the sales come through Amazon. But one platform that was actually pretty interesting was Fiverr. So Fiverr is the $5 marketplace, goods and services, everything starting at $5. And so I'd interviewed a guy for the podcast last year who said he earned enough on Fiverr to buy a house, like in cash, with like his first year on the platform. Like, oh my gosh, what's the story? How is he doing this? And so it came out that, because it's like, okay, you're selling your time, you get $4 at Fiverr takes $1 cut or 20% cut. And so you're getting $4 for this. Like, what could you possibly be selling that's worth your time? And it turns out, hey, I'm just selling PDF files. I'm selling like these pre-written files that, create once and sell 100 times. And I was like, okay, then that was kind of a little bit of a light bulb moment. So I let the KDP Select expire on one of these books. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put this up here and see if anybody buys it. And people did. I was kind of surprised, with minimal, marketing. I think it just kind of captured some keyword searches on Fiverr for the topic, and people ordered it. Now it's actually come way down. Like I don't think it's sold hardly any copies last month, but for the first few months, it was doing pretty well. For a certain period, it was actually selling more than it was on Amazon. I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I've heard so many different things on book promotions, and I never heard anyone mentioning Fiverr. So that's really interesting, like completely new route to investigate, because actually I presume you were getting more money per book from Fiverr than from Amazon, right?
Yeah, so the book, and at the time it was priced higher, but now the book is at $2.99, so I make about $2 a copy. But on Fiverr, everything is $5, so it's
So you're getting $4.
I'm getting $4 a copy, so almost twice as much. And so far, no one has complained that, hey, why are you selling this for more? Because I think it's a different audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, I usually used Fiverr. I used it for creating the full paperback design or book cover from the Kindle book cover I already had, because when I tried to have it, from scratch, I never had luck with the designers and never got a good quality thing. But once you already have the ready cover for your Kindle and you need it later on for CreateSpace, then it's quite a basic thing to do, and you get with $5 you kind of get the full print version of the cover with the back cover and the side and everything ready to upload on CreateSpace. So for that I'm usually using Fiverr, and my podcast intro is from Fiverr as well. But
mine too.
I never thought about looking for a book in Fiverr. To be honest, I never even thought that books were sold in there as well.
Yeah, and I don't know, like it's come down. What's so now one of my gigs, so that kind of got me started on like, what else can I do on this platform? So one of the gigs that I started doing is like these 5-minute video screen recordings of people's websites. So I'll turn on the screen recorder and I'll say, hey, this is what I would do to improve this website from SEO, conversion, design, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then as the upsell, I was like, okay, here's my book. Here's, I'll give you my website checklist or something. It was another book that I have written. And I'm like so happy when anyone orders that, because I haven't updated it in a year. And so every order that comes through is just like free money. And that's the beauty of book publishing in general. But it was, that's kind of exciting.
Okay, so we found out that it doesn't require any marketing, right? You got these people buying your book just by being there, right?
Yeah, and so there's, I don't know. That's the biggest challenge, like trying to get that initial momentum, trying to get people to order it when you have zero feedback, zero reviews. And so you can reach out to your friends. You could send them $5 on PayPal, and then you get $4 back when they buy your gig. And so it's like it's pretty expensive if you want to build up that initial social proof on your account. Because after 10 orders, then you become like a level 1 seller, and then you can add certain upsells and stuff. So,
okay. Did you get any feedbacks or anything from the people who bought your book?
Yeah, they were happy with it.
Okay, so they even left reviews as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that I make sure to put in my kind of delivery script. Like, hey, thanks so much for the order. Here's the file. Let me know if you have any questions, feedback. And actually, I put a calendar link at the very end. It says, hey, if you want to talk outsourcing, you want to talk virtual assistants, let's set up a 15-minute meeting, no charge, no questions asked. And then at the bottom, it says, like, hey, if you found this valuable, please be sure to leave a 5-star review here on Fiverr. Like, I'm a relatively new seller, and that feedback is super important. And so that seems to encourage people to leave a 5-star.
Well, very interesting. I really it's something very unexpected, let's say.
Yeah, I don't know. I think obviously nonfiction, I think, would work better, because I think people, for the most part, are looking for solutions to their problems and stuff like that versus just entertainment.
Yeah, well, with nonfiction, everything seems to be much easier. Even the writing of the nonfiction book is much, much easier than writing fiction.
I don't know. I'm not the... I don't know. I have a hard time. Maybe one day when I'll retire, I'll put together the great American novel.
Yeah, no, I think that business-wise and in terms of making money and, spending relatively less time on the books, nonfiction is better because, it's relatively easier to write. It's relatively easier to market. You can link it to your business and other services you're providing. So it's kind of, it's kind of as part of the business, while with fiction, it's a long-term thing, and you have to create that business through your books. And, writing a novel it takes much, much longer, and, working and making it perfect later on in terms of the editing works and things like that, it takes much longer and is more expensive than the nonfiction thing, because nonfiction is usually shorter, so it takes less time, and editors charge less because they charge per word. So
Yeah. How long are your nonfiction books, as an example?
I I
Oh,
haven't
your
written
fiction works.
my fiction works are. I have two novels which are around from 50 to 60,000 words, so they're relatively small for fiction because, like for example, there are some categories like thrillers and things like that, which are in average around 100,000 words. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 3 times longer than mine.
Yeah, it's 3 times longer, and it's I have a feeling that it's very difficult to create relationship with your readers. I mean, the romance book writers it's easier for them somehow, a bit, but still, it's always kind of difficult because even when writers blog, for example, nonfiction writers blog about the topics they are writing about. For fiction writers, it's a bit difficult because if you are not very well-known writer who can blog about himself and people are interested and you can post some of your personal, I don't know, photos or photos of the places you work at and things like that, at some stage, once you're already there and you're well-known, you can do that. But if you are not, what are you supposed to blog about? So
yeah, I can see like this is Dan Brown like researching his next Robert Langdon novel, but then if no one knows who you are, it's like I don't really care what your desk looks like.
So I mean, the maximum you can do is most probably write about topics which you covered in your fiction books, like with Dan Brown, he might go on and blog around some religious stuff, for example. I don't know, some mystical things, etc. But it's a challenge. It's difficult, and very few have found this right way to kind of promote their books and build the author platform, because with fiction it takes longer and it's more difficult. With nonfiction, it's relatively simpler. I don't know.
I agree with that. I'm not envious of you at all on that.
Yeah, I mean that's the impression I'm getting. It's not like I haven't written a nonfiction book yet. I started one, and but again, look, I mean, I started writing nonfiction book. I wrote it for about a week, and I'm 70% done already, approximately. So, if I find the time and write for one more week, the first draft will be ready and it can go for editing. But if you're not doing NaNoWriMo or some kind of, you don't put yourself under that kind of pressure, writing a real novel, I mean, decent novel in 1 month, it's very difficult. If you don't have that kind of challenge and pressure and, you don't force yourself, then it's quite tough. So I don't know. But Fiverr, it's kind of, it's the intake from this interview, because that's like one of the most amazing and interesting things that I discovered recently. So thank you for that tip. And
you bet.
What about how do you keep the ongoing sales on Amazon? Because I presume in the beginning with the promo and with this interest, and it was new, and most probably it was in the hot new releases, etc., etc. I mean, in the beginning you kind of get the momentum and you have some sales. Later on, if you don't continue doing something, if you leave it like that, it dries out somehow. So what do you do to keep the ongoing sales?
Yeah, it's definitely come down from where it was. So it's like, and it's kind of a pretty steady downward slope without breathing new life into it. So a couple things that actually from the very beginning, one thing that's really, really important, a lot of people overlook, is that transition from free to paid. Mm-hmm. And so what I found was effective was on that last day of the promo, the night before, I changed the price to 99 cents. And so this was Friday. So Thursday night, I changed the price to 99 cents. So it would update on Thursday or whatever, 12 hours later, however long it takes. And so it was still free on Friday morning, still free. Around noon, I decided, so this is noon Pacific time. I don't know if this is an exact science or whatever, just happened to be the time that I shut it off. So I shut off the free promo manually at 12 o'clock on Friday. And so what happens then is the book is, ranked number 1 in business, ranked number 1 in productivity, and it's still showing up on all these free charts. And it just says now it's 99 cents. And so I added a line at the top of the description that says, hey, 99 cents for a limited time. And the effect of that is that you're still getting all this exposure, kind of this internal traffic from Amazon, because you're at the top of all of these categories. And there's like, I don't know if they're going to change this in the future, but like at least at that time, it's like a 3 to 4 hour window, where you're still ranking on all these free charts. And so that's why the 99-cent price point was important, because it's like, oh, it's not free anymore. But look, it's got a bunch of positive reviews. People seem to like it, and it's just 99 cents. Like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and buy that. And so I left it at 99 cents over the course of the weekend, for the first 2 or 3 days after that free promo, and sold, I don't know, 300-400 copies. And I think because the free charts and the paid charts are there's pretty much like a line drawn down, like it doesn't necessarily have that impact. But by getting those initial paid sales, it proved to Amazon, like, hey, people are willing to pay money, even if it's just 99 cents, people are willing to pay money for this product. And so then began to rank on the paid charts. And as then I raised the price to the normal price, $2.99, and then it continued to make sales, and over time they decreased. So what I'm trying to do this month is do a couple countdown deals to see if, because it's still on KDP Select, so run a couple countdown deals and see if that can breathe some new life back into it for the holidays.
And do you have any, can you track somehow, do you have any information about how many potential clients are you getting from these book sales?
That's a good question. So I can see who has signed up for my email list through the specific landing page that's referenced in the book, which is something, for fiction or nonfiction authors, I think is really important, because Amazon doesn't give you the contact information. They're like, hey, these are our customers, not your customers. Like, well, I'd like to have a relationship with these people too. So that's something. So that resulted in several hundred new people signing up for the email list, which is awesome. But yeah, so I guess I could reach out to them specifically and be like, what kind of side hustle help do you need or something.
Yeah, that's, several hundred people. It's quite good. Especially if you take into account that you didn't do anything extra for that. You worked on the marketing of your book, and you didn't have to spend extra time or do some extra work to get those people on your list as well. You had the form in the book, that was it. So right. it's quite effective. So what do you know? What was the conversion rate approximately?
Oh, from downloads to signups, I don't know. Say 500, which might be high or low. So 500 over 20,000, which I don't know. Well, I can't do the math on the fly.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Well, but I think it's still, it doesn't matter whether it's nonfiction or fiction, but it's still always exciting to know that so many people have your stuff in their Kindles. We never know how many from those who downloaded the book actually read it later on, because that's something we can't find out either. But, just the thought that, we kind of spent some time and effort to create the book, and then the book ended up in many thousand of Kindles. It kind
of... Do you ever start to get nervous at that point when I'm like, this is great, it's going viral, but then it's like, oh, what if people don't like it? Or now I'm like opening myself up to bad reviews or something.
That's always scary, because if you get a bad review on Amazon, you can't really do much. You can report it, you can try to explain that it should be out, etc. But most probably it will stay there. So you don't have it's not your website, so you can erase it, or or reply something. Because usually if you go into dialogue and start replying, and things can get even uglier. So usually, it's better not even to interfere. Yeah. But it's always, it's kind of always very, not even annoying. It kind of, it makes you feel a bit, I don't know. It's very hard to get a 1-star review, especially if it's a bit harsh. And it's very difficult not to take it personal although it's not because this person doesn't know you, he's talking about the book, not yourself. But it's always difficult to absorb somehow.
It is. Gosh, I remember I got my first 1-star review, and I was like, I don't know, I was devastated. I was just depressed the whole weekend. I don't know. I was my wife was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I got a 1-star. Somebody didn't like my book.
Although, actually, when you mentioned about the relationships and the people who you can reach out, when I had one really, really bad 1-star review, actually, and it wasn't biased because I knew the person and I knew why he wrote that. But anyway, It was very harsh. And since I knew what was the reason, I took it relatively okay. But what made me warm inside was that these people, these relationships, and these people who saw the reviews, they immediately started getting in touch with me through Facebook, or they wrote me an email saying, don't pay attention, please don't listen to him, because he was advising me quitting writing, and that I wasn't doing it well enough, and I was doing some other things better, so I shouldn't even really think about this, etc., etc. So I had emails and I had Facebook messages from people saying, please don't listen to this person, and you shouldn't quit writing, please don't even think about that. And it was just 1-star review and 1-star review, but there were so many other messages I've got that day that actually I felt much, much happier than in my usual days at the end of the day. So you never know. I mean, it's just I always tell people you can never write a book which will be loved by everyone, and no one has done that yet. So you will always have someone who won't write it, like it, and then that someone might not be lazy enough and might decide to put the time and effort to write you a review, and that's okay.
Yeah. And on the tactical side, one thing that I found was important is to have your friends and supporters go ahead, because Amazon has a button at the bottom of every review. Was this review helpful to you?
Yeah.
And be sure to click no on the one that was flaming negative, even if it was helpful. They had some constructive criticism in there. But the reason is because Amazon's default, how they're displaying those reviews is by most helpful first. Mm-hmm. And so if a lot of people go through and upvote the negative review, that's going to be the first one that people see. Yeah. And so you're trying to make sure that I push that one down and upvote the 5-star ones.
Yeah, especially if you have many reviews and it's down, no one is really going that deep and reading all the reviews.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you very much for all those insights. I'm sure we found out many interesting things. I mean, the top one is the Fiverr. I'm still convinced about that one. But, we found out lots of useful tips. And I'm sure that with this positive vibe we had today, more people will be considering the side hustle and especially the self-publishing route very soon.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks for coming over. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Well, it seems like that was it for today. I hope that what we covered in the interview was really useful to you. And also, I would like to remind you, if you get time, just 1 minute, please hop over to iTunes and leave a review for the podcast. Because when I'm feeling down and depressed, when I'm having those bad days, what I'm doing is I'm going to iTunes and reading your reviews, and they brighten up my day and bring extra motivation and enthusiasm to carry on and record new episodes. Well, as to you, I think you know what you have to do. If you haven't done it today yet, go ahead, create really wonderful stories, so later on we can read those. And once again, don't forget to get your free ebook at www.anialexander.com/free in order to find out how to create a good quality book, how to prepare it for publishing, and how to find readers. Well, it seems that I told everything I wanted to tell you today. So take care, have a nice day, and I'll meet you next week.